down to the nitty gritty.
Well, it's 5 o'clock, so call this meeting to order. We do have a quorum. Kristen Dell is not here. Just so everybody knows, she's very close to her pregnancy date, and so she's gonna probably skip it. John, you had some talk briefly.
Yeah, the last time that I was here, and I apologize for missing the last meeting. Teresa, I'm going to send you another email address, which I use frequently. The AOL address I don't look at that frequently.
Okay, that should be the one that you prefer,
Okay, will do.
and we'll update all of the contact
Will do.
information.
At any rate, you wanted me to look at bylaw 9012A. And with particularity to numbers 13A and B in that bylaw. So the question was, especially with respect to B, where it lists as a legal responsibility of the Board of Education that the school district shall finance at a reasonable level an educational program designed to achieve this end. The end is mentioned in subparagraph A. And the thought was that, well, boards of education don't finance, okay? And that's true. This language, however, appears to have come fairly directly from a statute, section 10-4 of the Connecticut General Statute. And 10-4 says that the educational interests of the state include, and in C, I believe, subparagraph C, each school district shall finance at a reasonable level and at least as appropriate equal to the minimum budget, MBR, in order to achieve the ends of the interest of the state. So that language comes directly from the statute. Now, obviously, we know that's incorrect, and there are other statutes that talk about how boards of education gets funded. It spells it out. It goes to the if it's a board of town about a board of finance, it goes to the board of finance. They fund. If it's a town like Stratford, the selectmen or the councilmen fund. So the only way I get that this language is here. The only way I can reconcile those statutes is that what it probably should say is that the school district shall request financing at a reasonable level designed to achieve the end listed in paragraph or subparagraph A, which is that each child shall have equal opportunity to receive a suitable program of educational experiences.
So you would combine those two sentences into one?
I would leave it, but I would change B to not to say that the school district shall finance, but I would say that the school district shall request financing or funding at a reasonable level to provide for an educational program designed to achieve this end. That's the way I would word it.
Financing or funding?
To me, funding is better, but.
Request funding. Are you okay with that?
If you guys also look at 220, the 10-220 is the basic duties of the Board of Education. That doesn't directly see funding, but it says the Board of Education has to provide adequate instructional book supplies, staffing, proper maintenance of facilities, equitable allocation of resources, safe school setting, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So it sets out things you have to provide. It doesn't say specifically you have to fund for them, but it does say you have to provide them.
Yeah. And we have no income mechanism.
You have no impact.
Taxation.
You know, other states are different. There are other states where there's a separate school tax,
Yeah,
where the boards of education have the power to levy a separate
I know
school.
Pennsylvania's one, because we
Yeah,
get
but I
two
was
bills.
just about to bring that up, because we used to get it in Pennsylvania all the time.
Yeah.
But Connecticut's not one.
I get that tax bill, you know, I'm never ever getting that.
I know, I get it.
So then, I guess, do you wanna make a motion just to change B, or?
I will move to change B, to read that the, school district shall, fund, or shall request funding at a reasonable level to provide an educational program designed to achieve this end.
I'll second that. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passed unanimously. Now, Joe, did you have some stuff you were working on?
I had some homework. I was tasked to go over any time it said that the board's sole responsibility is to oversee the superintendent, so I tried to go through this and any language that was similar with that. So I guess it's throughout this whole book, but I have it on 9000B, line 11. Understand that the board members have no authority in beyond which is exercised at a board meeting, and no board member shall lend an impression that he or she is speaking on behalf of the Board of Education that authorized so delegated. So it's there. If you turn the page, I just highlighted them all because it's throughout this whole thing we were saying that it's redundant, but I think it's important, so. 9005A, number 12, it's on the bottom there. I don't have to read it throughout this whole book, but I went through and I highlighted every time that it appeared.
So, do you have a number of spots where it's,
Yeah.
so do you wanna, just for our clarity, do you wanna read off, so it's, for now, how about if we leave it on?
Yeah, well, if you leave it for now, I can make a whole list so that we could go through and.
But if we leave 9000B, if we leave that one there,
Mhm.
and then we remove it from all the other places,
Okay,
and then we can, because I kind of went through too, and I wanted to reorganize some of these things, but some of these, with all the redundancies, if we maybe pull out those,
Okay.
in all those other places,
yeah,
you know, so maybe we'll keep 9000B number 11,
Yeah,
and then if you want to list off all the other places you found it,
okay,
and then we can just
Yeah.
strike all those.
that makes sense. Just make sure that, it may seem redundant, but just make sure it's not needed in
I do
context
think
for
it
that
is, and some of them
particular.
needed in context, so
Yeah.
like when it talks about quorum,
Mhm,
one of the reasons we couldn't do it is because we don't have quorum, or we might have quorum because we didn't have an illegal meeting. So
mhm.
some of the areas I do think it's necessary,
Mhm.
but
Okay.
it is throughout.
But
the
there's a
book.
lot of duplicitous material there.
Yeah.
sure.
So I just went through and highlighted them all, I didn't go through and rate the importance of each section,
Mhm.
Okay.
okay?
Do you want to, well, do you want to give us the list then?
Sure.
And then Teresa can maybe give us that, and we can go through and kind of.
Yeah, so I'll type that up and send it
Okay.
to Teresa, and
Okay.
then.
Okay, that works.
Okay, all right.
And then, and that was all your homework?
That was my homework,
Okay.
thank you.
So I went through as well, and I was looking at more gathering information. And I actually wrote page numbers on mine, so it would be 9000B, number 10. It says, and so some of these I also want to consolidate into one section, because we've got a lot of sections again, like you said, are duplicitous, and they have a few different sentences, but a lot of them are the same. So number 10 says attend all board meetings insofar as possible, and be responsible for becoming informed on any and all issues coming before the board, as well as being prepared to discuss or act upon all agenda items. Then also number 12, individual board members interested in visiting schools or classrooms will make arrangements for visitations through building principal with notification for the, to the superintendent's office. And those are sentences I think need to be somewhere. And page 3, which would be 9005A, be responsible for becoming informed on any and all issues coming before the board,
Number 3.
which I think is repetitive of
Yeah.
number 10 on the other one.
Right.
And maybe, again, if we could get that whole list through, so we can, I'll go through again and, because there's the statement of integrity, there's the duties, and then there's another section that have a lot of, so I just want to kind of go through that. And then on the same page, number 4, seek to facilitate ongoing communication between the board, students, staff, parents, and all elements of the community, which I think is important. That, you know, there are some sections that talk about communication in different ways, but to me, I think it's important that the board communicate with the entire community and have the ability to do that as individuals. And then page, it's 13, which is 9030B, where it talks about communication. And so on page 2, I think some of those sentences can be pulled out of that section and pulled into the communications section. But it talks as staff members, you know, when it talks about communication between the staff and the board. It says staff members are reminded board meetings are public meetings. As such, they provide an excellent opportunity to observe and participate firsthand, it should say, in the board's deliberations on problems of staff concern. So that kind of leads to the belief that the staff, and it gives credence to the fact that staff and board members can communicate. And then there's that whole section, visit the schools, where that other sentence I read, and it just goes through whether officials, so what, you know, I think that needs to be cleaned up a little bit. And just, I talked to Floyd a little bit early on, how do we facilitate visits to schools for the purposes of gathering information without interfering with the daily activities of what goes on there. But so there's 2 spots again where it talks about schools and visits. So just this whole, I think taking a lot of that other section, the first section, 9000B, and putting some of that into this communications piece. And I just feel like nothing in this section denies the right of board members or staff to engage in open discussions for the purposes of sharing information essentially to either side to remain or become informed regarding each other's concerns or objectives. And I think something aligned, something to that extent should be in the communication piece, because I think it's imperative, and I don't think, you know, a board or a superintendent should deny any member or community the right to have open communication.
No.
You know, there's the whole section about social interaction, which talks about the ability to, you know, you can meet people in public and you can talk about it, but there's certain things you can't talk about in executive session, which I think should stay in there as well. But, and then number 3, page 13, number 3. Oh, I just wrote, nothing in this section allows a board member to be a distraction to the daily learning environment, and the right can be rescinded if any member oversteps their bounds. And I wrote consolidate page 13 with page 38, which is 9272, which it was code of conduct, data use, and then there's also this whole code of ethics, which I think some of those are again repeated in there. I don't know if code of ethics should be combined with our duties or responsibilities.
They're probably 2 separate things.
Yeah, I think they're separate.
Yeah, but there, a lot of it is redundant in there, and so I don't know if, I mean, obviously code of ethics is good to have, but I think it should have different language in it, not the same language in 2 spots.
Well, I'm looking at, for example, 9272. talks about, request data as a board, not as an individual, for example. That's under code of conduct, but that's kind of exclusive of, other, areas, which I don't have written down, but which allow for example, individual board members interested in visiting schools or classrooms, and, so, I think you gotta differentiate the two of them. I think that as far as a code of conduct, you say something like, again, you could reiterate the right of inspection, the right to request data. However, you have to draft some language that it would not be disruptive of the classroom, the school, or the educational experience.
Yep. And the second part of that sentence, request data not as an individual unless information readily available and will not redirect staff
Right,
time.
exactly, yeah, right.
And then I kind of wrote a note on that one specifically. I said, all information requested by an individual shall be shared with the entire
right,
time with the
Yeah.
entire board at the appropriate time.
Now, you gotta think about that in two ways, because obviously, every board member should have the right to get information, and get data, get information. But again, you don't want it to become a nuisance,
Yeah.
So, I can see the other argument too. Okay, we wanna request this information, but it's gotta be maybe a gatekeeper.
Yeah.
And maybe the gatekeeper is the chairman of the Board of Education,
Yeah.
Gotta do something like that, maybe,
Yeah.
because listen,
But,
people are, you know as well as I do, we've had, from the council side, we've had a number of councilmen over the years, and there are good councilmen, and there are people that are, quite frankly, just, they're a pain. They try to interject themselves into everything. That's not good either,
Yeah.
unless you have a gatekeeper of some kind.
Well, and to that point, I think if it said, it says, all right, so it says, is readily available and will not redirect staff time.
Yeah.
And maybe it should say, if a staff member believes the request will create undue stress or work, that staff member has a right to get clearance from the chairman or the superintendent.
Something like that, yeah.
And my whole point is looking, like, to your point, you wanna eliminate people from abusing that privilege. But my point is also, if you have a chairman or a superintendent or somebody in charge who says, no, I just don't wanna give this out.
Absolutely.
You're asking me for information I don't wanna share with you.
Absolutely.
And I'm not gonna give it to you.
I agree.
So that person has the right to, I think, all board members, the majority and the minority, have the right to request information. I don't think the minority should be withheld from gathering information.
I agree.
If the board chair who's in the minority, in the majority, decides, nah, I don't want them. So it's a, I hate to use the word, but it's a slippery slope.
It is.
And it's a double-edged sword.
It is.
But we kind of have to consider both sides. An abusive board member and abusive leadership, and so we
Agreed.
want to allow.
Agreed. That's why, again, I think that if you have those kind of disputes, there's gotta be a gatekeeper, there's gotta be somebody to make that
Yeah.
determination.
Yeah.
Everybody feels differently. My personal philosophy is that the superintendent and the staff are the experts, but the board members are the elected representatives of the people that run the schools. And so if you're gonna have a gatekeeper, that gatekeeper probably should be located at the Board of Education level, as opposed to, say, the superintendent's office. That's only my personal opinion, but
Yeah.
other people feel different,
But again, I like we're not gonna decide it right now, but if a board member makes a request that a staff member feels is inappropriate or
right.
abuse, they have the right to appeal
Correct.
that to the superintendent or the board chair.
Pick one,
Yeah,
pick one.
yeah. But somebody who could say,
Right.
you're overstepping your bounds. We can give you this, but
Right.
we're not gonna give you this. What you're doing is, and some people will do it for personal reasons. They wanna gather information of their own personal reasons, it's like, no, you can't use your board position to,
To do that,
Yeah.
right,
yeah,
absolutely,
it has to be a community.
absolutely.
And then it said, so again, it says in that same one, avoid using board position and information data supplied
Sure.
as a result of board membership or personal gain. I think that's stated in a number of places.
It probably is, and those are the types of things that should be in the ethics of the code of
Yeah.
conduct.
And then recognize that decisions can only be made majority of the board meeting after everyone on the board has adequate time and all the data, information.
Yep.
So one of the questions, and this is the sentence I like, because there's one sentence in there that says, all decisions by the board are made by a majority, and once the majority decides, then all board members must support that decision, right? So number 7 says, which I like the language in this, abide by majority decisions of the board while retaining the right to seek changes through ethical and constructive channels. So I don't think, just because the majority of the board votes on something that we all now have to
No.
support it.
That wouldn't
You know,
seem right.
But
Number 7 is, seems to me anyhow, to be, proper.
yeah,
So, if a majority of the board votes for something, that's the rule, that's the law, that's the motion.
Yep.
That's what the system follows. However, you don't check your constitutional rights at the door. If you don't think that's right, you don't have to stand up and support it. You can say, listen, I voted against it, I think it's wrong because of this, this, and this.
Mhm.
But it's the law, we're following it, you know?
yeah.
We discussed that once before, and I think it's important that we
Mhm.
have the ability to decide.
Yeah, so then I made a note, like, move all items regarding board authority, page 5.
Which one is on page 5?
Page 5 is I'm sorry, you guys don't know. Authority of members. And there's a number of places in there where it talks about our authorities.
Yeah, yeah.
But just kind of, and I know we cleaned up 911A, but we maintain that, so I think a lot of that, again, I think there should be the way it's laid out, should be kind of like maybe authority of members, code of conduct, but all those things that are scattered throughout it should be in an order, and then,
Yeah.
the other things are in other places, but. And then, also let's see, page 36, which was another one. Let's see. Conflict of interest. There's other sections in this,
Which
I'm
bylaw
sorry,
number?
9270. And so, I don't know if you did it yet, but can we get the page numbers at the bottom of the,
Sure.
you
As
know?
I go, I will do that.
Okay, yeah.
See, now, a
I mean,
conflict,
for me, this is like way easier, because
Exactly.
see, a conflict of interest is a topic that fits very easily into conduct or integrity or a code of ethics. But you could combine those two together very easily, because conflict of interests are ethical problems.
and it's referenced in a number of other places as
Mhm.
well.
Mhm.
But there's one part of it, I'm looking at my notes here, I'm trying to see where it would be. But it talks about, and I don't know, maybe we get some clarification on this, but it says, basically board members don't have to vote on an item. And so, my recollection on the council was you had to vote on every item unless you declared a conflict of
And that's what
interest.
the council rules say.
Yeah.
You don't get a chance to pick and choose what you want to vote on. Most bodies don't allow you to just not vote.
Yeah.
Okay? They allow you to abstain if you have a conflict. And that conflict could be an economic conflict or a personal conflict. So if you felt you had a conflict to vote on something, you would stand up and voice that conflict. Let's say I'm on the Board of Education and just, for example, there's a motion to provide my wife with a $5,000 stipend because she was, because of her years of service or something. Well, I would have a conflict if I was on the board, so I'd stand up and say, I gotta abstain from that. And because I have a financial conflict. And when you abstain, by the way, it means not only from the voting, but from talking about it, conversation, discussion of it. So I couldn't get up and say, and speak in favor of it, and then say, but I can't vote on it.
Okay.
I've gotta keep hands off altogether. So, but I haven't seen bylaws, for the most part, that allow a board member not to vote, just not to vote for any reason. That,
And that
that's
is,
counterproductive to why you're here, you know?
I'm trying to find it out, but it is in here. Conflict of interest. Policies, goals, policies. Anyway, I'll find it, but, I mean, I think you agree with me to the point that,
Yeah.
being the, I'll find it later.
No problem. Now, I don't know how detailed you guys wanna get, but if you, I'm looking at 9270, for example, it says, interest shall mean pecuniary or material benefit accruing to the Board of Education member, officer, employee, or their relatives. Well, what does relative mean? Is it my spouse? Is it my spouse and parents? Is it my spouse, my brother and sister, my cousins? How about my second cousin? How about, you know what I mean? I don't know if you wanna leave it that way, or you, cause I know like the town conflict of interest and the housing authority conflict of interest, they specifically define the level of relatives that are, yeah, exactly.
So, and I guess the other part of it too would be, you know, how do we, so, for instance, your wife works for the Board of Ed, you're on the Board of Ed, does this say you can't vote for the budget? Which I don't think.
I don't know what your bylaws say. The town has a similar situation because, yeah, as you know, people in the educational system can serve on the legislative body of the town, even though they have to vote on certain things. And there have been many teachers, for example, who served on the council. So the council has a provision that says that as long as what you're on, backtrack, what you are voting on may affect you financially or a member of your immediate family financially, it's okay for you to vote on it so long as it impacts an entire class, so long as it's not just you, or it's not just your family situation, that it's the budget, so it impacts an entire class of people. Your relative is just a minor part of that whole thing. And so there's a provision that says you can vote on that. But the code of conduct, for example, on the town specifies that, you know, absent something like that, you cannot vote. It's a conflict of interest if you vote and you or a person, a relative within a certain sphere of people listed financially benefit from it. You know?
Yeah, I think we should go into more detail about how extended family or, you know, so I think immediate family is appropriate.
But even, you know, material benefit, if your kid's in the school system and you're voting on something that'll affect the school, you can in, you know.
That's okay,
We-
because it's
Yeah.
affecting your person as a member of an entire class.
Yeah.
that-
Well, we don't want it to be misconstrued as limiting, you know, a parent to, because then they can't vote on it. If it's misconstrued inappropriately,
Oh,
then,
no,
you know, then parents can't vote on anything that has to do with Board of Ed, you know, because their kids in the school.
Yeah,
just wanna-
no, you don't want that, but you gotta kind of, you gotta amplify
Yeah.
a little
Yeah.
bit about what's meant.
And is there, I know Kristen was looking at some of the hiring,
Mhm.
and going through just the different references with that, so we can kind of classify all that into one section as well,
Mhm.
reference the existing policies.
Mhm.
So I mean, I don't know if there's anything else really kind of standing out, but I think if we could get that red lines, you know, with everything in here and then just go through and try and consolidate some of these sections.
Okay, that's fine with me.
And for your numbering on the bottom, can I just ask you a question? Did you start with the table of contents? Like,
Yeah.
what's your number one
Yeah.
page, so I know
Right.
I'm starting with the
My
same
number one is 9,008,
9,008,
Okay.
and then I'm gonna go through and do the same.
Yeah.
Okay,
and I just ran through there.
all right.
Excellent.
And what's been helpful for me too is marking some of these up, is we have the big white book
Yep.
that's bindered.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to keep all my, this is my
Yeah.
messy one,
Yeah.
but I have the same, so.
But I've been, yeah, I've
okay.
been pulling out some of the bindered ones, so I got the one I took the original notes on, pulling out the bindered ones.
Yeah.
Established policy. Oh, it says, oh, okay, so on 9,000B, it says, declare a conflict of interest when it arises and excuse from related discussion and action on all that issue.
Mhm.
And then and there's another part in it too, whereas unless a board member declares a legitimate conflict, all present board members must vote in all matters before the board and will abide by the principle of majority vote.
Yeah, which is what it should be. Some of us, and one of the things you just read, declare a conflict of interest when it arises and excuse it. That's probably better in the conduct section, in the ethics section,
Yeah.
than in the duties.
Right. Right, and then I just had some notes in there, removing stuff, I think we eliminate some of it. Board members arrive at conclusion after the opinions of, you know, and opinions of board members with different point of views will be respected, you know, and that's in duties, but that, I think, again, should maybe be in conduct or, you know, code of conduct.
Mhm.
um,
Yeah, I see the duty section more as what you guys have authority over, what you guys have an obligation to do, as opposed to how you should act.
Right.
That should be more in the conduct section.
And then like the statement of integrity, the Board of Ed is committed to the highest 9,005B, highest level of ethical standards in governing the school system that endeavors to encourage growth and support established innovative educational objectives. I thought that should be in the opening statement, the purpose, you know, so, it's just, it's all over here, so.
Yeah.
So, is that, I mean, is everybody good kind of where we are, if we get that section and we can kind of?
Yeah, I think that if Teresa could provide a full red line through what we talked about today, we can look at it, we can probably go back from the beginning up to that point in time, see if there's anything other that needs to be tweaked or.
Moving things from section to
Right.
section, and now if we're all on the same page number
Right.
situation, okay, move this to page
Right,
one. I
right.
mean, the page numbers are gonna continue to change, so I'm sorry. It's gonna be a
Yeah,
pain,
right.
but if, I can see reorganizing it and
Yeah.
stuff, but.
But I think if we do it, approach it in that way, then we'll get some coherence into what we've been doing so far,
Yes.
and it'll kind of move through this.
Yeah, okay. All right, and then we have the minutes too, which I think, the minutes reflect everything that's in the folder you gave us, right?
Right.
Okay, so, yeah, and once you have those, if you could just notify us, and if we get maybe like printed copies, and it's a PDF, but just for the four of us,
Sure.
for now, I mean, we can post it so in the minutes or whatever it is, but, And then, you know, I can bring it to Kristen or John or whatever it is, and then we can start working from those and, start to clean up. You know, but I think we've got a lot of good framework here, but it's just kind of now consolidating it.
Mm-hmm. Agreed.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Great. That's it. Anything else, sir?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion, second by Clark, all in favor? Opposed? Motion passed unanimously. Thank you.